Hi, I'm Katie Blake, and this is my project on mental health nursing. Today I'm going to be talking about a situation during my inpatient psych clinical with a schizophrenic patient, some learning and research that occurred, and how I would change the situation with this new knowledge. Before psych this semester, I was hesitant and unsure of how to interact with psych patients, especially those with schizophrenia, as I had never known or interacted with someone with this diagnosis, making communication intimidating and foreign. During clinical, I had the opportunity to sit down and talk with a patient who was presenting with signs of acute mania. She was steadfast in her delusion of people waiting to pick her up from the grocery store and that she wasn't meant to be there. She stated that these people were on their way to get her and bring her in for government testing. She was responding to internal stimuli during our conversation, often speaking to herself, and spoke about a man in her room that was a part of the government coming to get her. What I was thinking. During this conversation, I was very confused and had thoughts such as, I don't know how to respond to her. Should I reassure her that no one is here or deny her thoughts or feelings in a constructive way? Another thought that I had was, what is reliable and what is not in our conversation? And found it difficult to discern what was real and what wasn't. Some of the feelings that I had were fear, confusion, and anxiety surrounding what to say and how she would react. I responded to her with, oh really? And asked her what had the man been saying. What I learned from our lecture class on schizophrenia and the associated video about some of the therapeutic techniques used, such as mirroring of the patient with phrases like, I'm noticing you're looking around and checking for something. Could you explain what's happening or what you see? And clarifying phrases that help you assess the delusions and hallucinations. I also had a discussion with my psych professor about how to approach patients with acute manic states. She discussed the importance of focusing on the emotions attached to their hallucinations and delusions instead of negating or denying the delusion or hallucination. She also explained that denying these experiences and telling them that their reality isn't real often leads patients to disengage and stop telling you about their experiences or deny them altogether. Instead, focusing on their emotions helps create empathetic and therapeutic communication between nurse and patient. In addition, during our psych clinical simulation, I learned the importance of safety in the patient setting. This includes assessing suicidality and homicidality in patients, and specifically with schizophrenic patients, assessing if they're seeing and hearing things that others are not. This concept is important when treating patients, as the main reason why they're hospitalized is because they're either a harm to themselves or others, or interacting with their environment in unsafe ways, such as walking into traffic. Some of the research I found supports these ideas, such as an article that discussed interviews with psychiatrists about the techniques they use to communicate with people with schizophrenia. These techniques focused on emotional content of the patient's statements. Another article interviewed mental health nurses on their techniques as well. They discussed that speaking with patients about their hallucinations, listening to their experiences, and trying to understand their effect on patients was essential to assessing and communicating with these patients. In addition, avoidance of confrontation was another useful technique, as confrontations such as denying or ignoring the patient's experiences can lead to disengagement as well as aggression and violence. What I would do now in the takeaway message. Going back, I would clarify her hallucinations and delusions and use reflection with phrases like, I'm seeing you look around the room. Can you explain what you're seeing? Or what are the voices saying? Or can you tell me more about what you're experiencing right now? This gives a more accurate assessment of the patient's hallucinations and delusions. In addition, I would respond to the patient's hallucinations and delusions by focusing on the emotional aspects of them, such as, that sounds really scary, or I can see how upset and distraught this is making you feel. These statements validate the patient's emotions and encourage them to share their experiences. I would also perform a safety assessment for feelings of harming themselves or others, and also assess if they're seeing or hearing things that others are not. In conclusion, this experience and research has taught me a lot about how to communicate effectively and therapeutically with patients with schizophrenia. Among these techniques that I learned is the use of reflection and emotion-centered communication. These engage the patient and help build a sense of trust as mental health staff convey a sense of understanding and empathy. In addition, clarifying details surrounding delusions and hallucinations and performing safety assessments is important to better assess the condition, ensure safety of the patient and members of the milieu, and provide the necessary resources to aid these patients. With all of these learning opportunities, I can use these tools to put in my toolkit for future psychiatric situations. And these are my references from the articles talked about earlier.